What's up, everybody? My name is Galson Anthony, the best to ever do it, and another episode of the G2G podcast. Today in studio, I got somebody rather interesting. Somebody who, if he had to spend $1 million every day since Jesus was born, he'd be richer than you. Well, me too. Somebody who's been quite a controversial figure, but a voice for South Africa too. A man who's got so much passion and charisma. Let's get to know who we're talking about. We've got Mr. Rob Hersov in studio. How you doing?
Very well. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. You know, I believe you don't live in Johannesburg. You live in a different city.
I grew up in Johannesburg,
Okay.
but I live in Cape Town now.
Which part of Johannesburg? Tell me more.
So grew up very close to here in Morningside, and my parents still live in the house that I was born in.
So you and I literally would have been neighbors if you and I were the same age. We would have just walked to each other's places.
Something like that.
Okay. What was it like here in Sandton back in those days? Which year were you born?
So I was born in 1960.
1960.
And I was born on West Road, South Morningside. My dad turns 99 this year.
99.
And my mum turns 91 this year.
Right.
And they're both in very good shape. And they still live in the property I was born on. And it's 5 minutes from here, up the road.
If your dad and mom is 99, 91, that means you got good genes. So you're going to live at least until then.
Yeah, I'm 65 this year.
Okay. So you were born in the 60s and apartheid was there. Tell me, what was it like? Now, please paint me the picture because we're in Sandton. Paint me that picture as you walk in. Was Alexander there? Because that's literally down the road as well.
Yeah.
And how did that whole situation work out for you?
So I was born in 1960, and until I went to boarding school at age 13. So I lived in Johannesburg. So I really lived in Johannesburg from 1960 to 1973. In 1973, I went to boarding school, Michael House in KZN. It's known as the farm school of all the 5 private boys' boarding schools. And from age 13 to age 18, I was in the Natal Midlands. I then went to University of Cape Town, and then I spent 2 years doing military service.
Okay.
So
it was compulsory then, right?
It was compulsory.
Okay.
And so from age 0 to age 13, I lived here in Johannesburg. And Sandton, and Sandown, this is one of the suburbs of Sandton, Morningside the other, was paradise. It was basically very big properties and a lot of farms. It was a lot of open areas. There were none of these big buildings that you see now.
So what was it, like a suburb in terms of you just go to a little shopping center or go to a 7-Eleven or I think at the time there was a Centra?
Yeah, I can't remember the names.
Can't remember? Okay.
Yeah.
So you probably just walked down there.
People had 1, 2, 3 acre properties, and it really was Johannesburg. The center of Johannesburg was where the action was. Rosebank barely existed as a CBD. Sandton did not exist as a CBD. So we were out in the boonies. We were out in the...
Were there any black people walking around?
Yeah, but most of them were working for white families in the area.
So we understand that was an apartheid time, so they had to have like a permission slip or like a permission passport. Were they Tompas?
A pass,
yeah, to be walking around. So that was that era, that time.
That was that
era.
You
witnessed.
Yeah.
So in that time, how racist were you from 1 to 10?
My best friend was the butler. He was a Zimbabwean, Mr. Pete. He looked after the house, and he'd play football with me every day. He was a Kaizer Chiefs fan, which made me a Kaizer Chiefs fan. Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs were the 2 great football teams in South Africa, and he was a Kaizer Chiefs fan, which made me the same. And so, he was my best buddy other than my friends who were at school. And he and I play football every day. I loved playing goalkeeper. He'd shoot. And it was only when I was about 8, 9, 10 years old that I was conscious of the institutionalized system called apartheid. Because I wanted to go to the movies and I wanted him to come with me, and he couldn't. And I started crying because I didn't know why he wasn't allowed to come with me. And as growing up as a little boy, you grew up in a world of white people separated from a world of black people. And that's how you grew up. That was the norm. It was part of life.
I want to get into your home. I want to get into your private space. So what was it like? Was your parents institutionalized mentally by saying, okay, look, you can't go with the butler because he's black. You, my little white boy, please go and just don't talk to black people along the way. What was it like?
There wasn't don't talk to black people along the way, because you would interact with black people, but in most cases they were staff. They worked in the house or worked for us in various capacity. Our driver was black. Our butler that ran the house was black. The guys that worked in the garden were black. But they were all friends, you know, we all interacted on a perfectly normal basis. But that's how it was in those days.
Okay. Moving on
Apartheid stands for separateness. That's what it means. Apartheid.
Not hate?
What, not?
Not hate?
No.
So where does the hate come in? Because a lot
no
later,
hate.
there was no hate.
Apartheid, H-E-I-D, if you translate it directly, is separateness. There's no hate in the word.
I want to talk about a gentleman called Nota. I don't know if you recognize that name. He was a gentleman that decided to say something towards the effect that because white people have the Neanderthal gene in them, they're less than human beings.
What a stupid thing to say. No.
Mm-hmm. Never heard of that?
No, that's moronic. Why would someone say that?
Well, I wanted to know your thoughts of it.
That's very stupid.
That's stupid.
It's a very stupid thing to say. How can you judge anyone on the color of their skin? Racism is a pigment of the imagination. It's for stupid people. Whether you're white or black, if you believe that the color of your skin makes you any different from someone else, is fundamentally stupid.
Do you know why I would second that? I had Aaron's roots sitting where you're sitting, and I went to the same high school as he did. When I got to the 10th grade, I believe I was like 16, my mother decided to drop me off at school. And because I was late, I'm 40 this year. So Aaron's roots and I were actually in the same class. So she decided to drop me off at school. Usually I'll take the bus, you know. But this time around, people saw us like, wait, your mom is colored? I'm like, what's that? It's like, your mom is colored. I didn't understand what that meant. I was not conscious about race until probably 16 upwards. I know I got a mom, I got a dad. I don't have a black dad and a colored mom. You know, I got mom and dad. So South Africa has taught me to understand race the way I do today. Was that your experience?
No. Who's this Nota person? And when did he say this moronic comment?
Well, Nota became so popular on the 17th of February, so much so that Elon Musk retweeted what he said and put HMMM for
Fair enough. Who is Nota?
Let's just call him an executive producer in the music business. He's been quite a voice on the internet. So he's
South
pretty
African.
popular. Yep. He actually sat there and I cross-questioned him.
He's a dumbass.
As you'd say in America. You heard that yourself. Now, are you trying to run for office?
No.
There's something about you that resembles Donald Trump. Now, another bias. I do like Donald Trump. So there's a little bias there, but there is resemblance about it. You know, the way you move your hair, maybe a little bit of the hair color, maybe just everything about you, being in their 60 years old and a little bit older, and you have a charisma of a young man. Donald Trump has the stealth, and so do you. Is there like a page out of his book that you took?
No, there really isn't. I haven't met Donald Trump personally, and he's not the kind of character I'd like to have a dinner with and hang out with. However, I respect his policies. I respect his team he's put together. I would definitely have voted for him all 3 elections.
But if you don't want to have to sit down and have dinner with him,
just
why is
his
that? Like
character, he kind of is a bit bombastic. I'm working him out. I actually listened to the 3 hours of the Joe Rogan interview, and he actually has an interesting sense of humor. He's got a soft side. He's got an interesting sense of humor, which I missed initially, and now I pick it up. I know when he's kidding, and it took a while to get to that. But I think if I had a dinner with him, I'd like it to be a one-on-one, and not with a whole lot of people around the table, because I think he's a different person when he's speaking to the press, when he's got a lot of people around him. But I think one-on-one, I think he'd be quite an interesting guy. I'd quite like him.
This is why I want to say that you guys resemble each other. And the thing about Donald Trump, he's a businessman, successful real estate. He got to where he is, and he decided to, be vocal about it and go for president. What's funny is that most people don't know this started happening back in the 80s. He just started running in 2016 as a Republican, as he said. When he first got into office, I was like, Donald, come on, just shush. Obama is there. Just be on the side. You're not going to win. Boom, he ran for president. 2 years into presidency, I'm like, you're onto something. Now, Rob Hersov has something quite similar. We did not know Rob Hersov before the internet. boom, he pops out of nowhere, becomes a voice. He speaks against certain things that is happening, atrocities, a bad economical state. He speaks about it. Boom, he's on every other podcast and he's speaking against it. And somewhat sounds like if he were in that position that Donald Trump is in South Africa, he would run the country. He would take that. Does that sound familiar?
I really don't want to be in politics. This country is so easy to fix. It's so easy to fix. What the country needs desperately is 3 to 5% economic growth. But the ANC has absolutely no idea how to do it.
And why do you hate them so much?
I don't hate them. I just think that they need a change of direction. I look at the ANC and say, it's fragmenting, it's falling apart, it's on its way out.
All right.
Correctly so. But I look at the team that's running the ANC and I say, is there one person there that would have the courage to stand up in front of the rest of the ANC and the rest of South Africa and say, our policies are not working. Let's change direction, like has happened in Argentina and happened in Sweden in 1992. And I'm looking into the ANC thinking, who could that person be? I don't see anyone. So it's got to be the younger generation. But they're a patriarchy. They go from president to vice president, all senior guys.
It's the only country that I've seen actually do that.
It's
where
crazy.
Vice president will be president.
I know. Isn't going to happen this time. But, I'm hoping that there's someone in the ANC that could stand up and say, guys, this isn't working. If we're going to get economic growth, if we're going to get people out of unemployment, if we're going to fix the country, we need to change a direction. But I don't see anyone of that generation doing it.
In general,
and then I look at the opposition parties and, the DA are phenomenal at fixing roads and sewage and getting things done. But I also don't see anyone in the leadership of the DA right now who could lead the country. So there you have the two top parties, ANC and DA, and none of them, in my view, have that person that has the magic to do it. So you've got to look to then Gayton McKenzie, Corné Mulder, and, Gayton's the most likely to do it. He's the one that I keep saying he's got it. But he doesn't have a party underneath him that can deliver.
Right. The structure is not strong enough.
He doesn't have the bench.
Right.
And then people go, Rob, what about you? What about you? I'm 65 this year. I'm a businessman. I've got some form of adult ADHD. I cannot sit in a meeting for half an hour listening to people talking nonsense. Half the time I know what they're going to say. The rest of the time I know what they're saying is nonsense. And if they haven't done their homework, imagine being Cyril Ramaphosa or one of the cabinet ministers. 32 cabinet ministers.
32.
How
That's
do they
a lot.
get anything done?
Right. They're going to argue amongst themselves a lot. But I wanted to paint this picture of you because I do see the picture you're painting, like who's going to be the best person. I want to take this a little into depth about some things.
This is very good, by the way.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I love the honey. I love that little honey sauce.
Oh, so you could tell. Okay. I like that. There's a little bit of blueberries as well, and they're natural. They're all natural. So it's not one of the synthetics, not speaking down to every other alcohol, but it's natural mostly.
Feels it.
We look at South Africa, the political structure. We have the party in lead right now. The way it looks like is they don't really care about the regular black person. It seems that they're manipulating everybody. Black man, hate white man because white man took from you. It seems an us against them. Then what they do is actually sit and try and loot money one after the other, keeping that hierarchy that you're referring to and keeping it secure so the president can become vice president so that person can keep the mandate that way. You say that there's no one with the courage to come out. Why do you think so? Do you think A, they're trying to secure the money for life and make sure that they keep that tumultuous South Africa so they can stay so much in power and blame everybody else? Or B, they're really onto something, trying to change the country?
They're not trying to change the country. The ANC has become a malevolent organization that has at its base complete incompetence. I look at the lineup of people at the top of the ANC and I say, if I was to hire one of them to run one of my businesses, who would I hire? And there's not a single one there. Fikile Mbalula is charming and he's fundamentally stupid. Gwede Mantashe is a communist. In this day and age, how can you be a communist? Communism has failed everywhere it's been tried, including socialism. And for South Africa to have a communist party is moronic.
Do you think they were communists because it's up? I understand
It's
ANC was
opportunistic.
opportunistic.
It's exactly right. There's
'Cause
nothing to
if
do
we-
with communism.
Because if
It
we look
just
at the
sounds cool.
but let's look at why are they communists? Because the relationship they have with these two opposing countries, Russia, China, and the United States, if they have to tilt the support from Russia and China, that have to mimic a communism look. Do you think that's why they're communists?
They've been bribed.
Right.
Zuma's been bribed by Russia. ANC's been bribed by Iran. And they're hoping that China will be there to pick up the pieces. Do you know what the ANC is about? It's nothing to do with South Africa. They don't care. Cyril Ramaphosa even said that he would put the ANC ahead of the country, and he's done that. And he does that in every single decision. The
Say that line
ANC
again, please, because that's a very important line.
Cyril Ramaphosa said he will always put the ANC ahead of the country. It's about money. All they do is look after their elites, and their elites are the ANC senior people, the BEE people, the cadres that they've put into all the organizations, most of whom are incompetent and have destroyed everything they've touched. And that's all they matter about. And they're keeping the population poor and unemployed so they can bribe them with social grants. If you keep someone reliant on 350 Rand a month, they vote for you. It is beyond malevolent. It is cruel and it is terrible. If you keep people undereducated, unemployed, homeless and hopeless, you own them. And that's what it's about,
Dependence.
It's complete malevolence, and it's sick, and it's awful. And that's the ANC. And you've got worse MK and EFF. Worse.
We will get to MK and EFF. Now, you've accused them for bribery. How do you know about this bribery? Were they on the table? Did somebody snitch?
No, it's clear. It's blatant bribery, and it's subtle bribery. Dudu Mayeni was made the head of South African Airways. She's a school teacher. What she knows about a business, about finance, or about aviation is zero. The reason she was put in that position was so the Guptas could tell her, redirect that money over here, buy that airplane so we get a commission. They didn't care about South African Airways. And they hire people and hire people and hire people. South Africa Airways was the most had too many employees doing nothing, and it bankrupted the airline. All they were doing it for was to steal money and to put people in place who would be loyal, not because they wanted an efficient airline that made money and served the people. And you can apply that strategy to Eskom, Transnet, Denel. It's corruption, incompetence, kleptocracy par excellence, and they've destroyed the country.
I agree with you. However, I've heard you say this in a couple of podcasts. The issue is that as somebody, well, I'm a lot privileged than most people would be. I know what SAA is. I've flown a lot to different countries with SAA. I was proud of that airline. Hell, Delta has fallen, and SAA at some point was better than it. But people won't understand that because they don't catch a plane. Majority of South Africa.
Correct.
Right? So they don't understand what has been stolen. So as far as Rob is concerned, we don't.
So true.
Yeah, get away with your
Very good point.
Right. So Transnet, if nobody's
Also,
really, it's the same story.
Yeah.
So please make this a more macro everyday example.
For the average person.
For the average person.
So the average person wants electricity, water, good education for their kids, and the opportunity for a job. That's about it, you know. Whether there are potholes in the roads or not, they don't have cars. They're in taxis, okay? I agree with you. You're right. On the airline side, on Transnet side, the average person in the street has no idea what I'm talking about, okay? In 1994, I try to put myself in the shoes of an average black person in 1994, okay? If you go from 1994 to 2008 or 2010, life improved considerably.
Oh, yeah.
Houses, electricity, water, sewage. The vast majority of black South Africans' lives improved. And in that period of Mandela and Mbeki, we had 3 to 5% economic growth.
Every single year.
And people,
there was a point that we had 4.9%. That was the highest I remember. That was in Thabo Mbeki's time.
It was working. And that was called the Rainbow Coalition. And then in came the gangster, Zuma, and the completely useless Ramaphosa. And that period, let's call it 2010, 2012 to today has been an unmitigated disaster. And the average South African voter knows that. And I think the ANC is probably down at 30% right now, because the average South African says, look, apartheid wasn't great. It was pretty bloody awful. But this crowd are doing something wrong, and we know it. But when they put their heads up and look around about who do I vote for, they're not convinced yet about the DA, because the ANC propaganda machine has positioned the DA as a white party, as taking their grants away, none of which is true. And the ANC and MK and EFF have created this kind of whiteness as the enemy. The propaganda.
Say it as it is. White supremacists. They call it white supremacist.
Which it isn't.
I want to break that down, but I just want to go to the positive side. So the ANC, since they came in 1994, there was 1,000 millionaires, black millionaires at the time. It is 2025. The last time I checked the record, there's 36,000 millionaires in South Africa. Half of them are black. I've seen you speak about BE not working. 17,000 black millionaires exist today because of the BE. That is my best assumption. Do you think that's a positive thing that the ANC has done?
I'll tell you what would have been better. And Julius Malema said this. It's one thing I agree with him. He said, why should BEE benefit a small number of elite all the time? You know, the Patrice Motsepis, the Mossam Goshangs, the Sela Malokos, the Nkunku Sawazis, all the time. They're the ones chosen. When a business owner instead could have given that 30% to the employees that work in that business. And I agree with him. That would have been a way, way better thing to do. So the ANC create this black elite that are reliant on them for BE favors, the tenderpreneurs, instead of enriching a much broader base of people in South Africa. But here's the problem. The ANC doesn't want the vast majority of people to join the formal economy. Because once someone joins the formal economy, once someone gets a title deed to the small piece of land on which they've lived for 30, 40 years, they can then get a mortgage. They can then pass that on to their children. They then have a title deed to that piece of land. They join the formal economy. And then they're not going to vote ANC. They're going to be looking DA, FF+.
Look for a more competent party. So they did the right thing the wrong way, but they did the right thing.
In free markets.
Right. So we'll get to capitalism versus communism. So they did the right thing the wrong way, enriching people so that they can be enriched themselves. So they can keep be them. Sponsored. Therefore. Now let's speak about Julius Malema, who literally lives down the road from us, like in the literal sense. Now I'm gonna say this part. I emailed Rob Hersov, a known billionaire. And
you saw one photograph.
Just one photograph, right? And Ernst Roots, everybody calls him racist. So our favorite racist in the country.
He's not a racist.
I don't believe him to be racist.
Julius is a racist.
We'll get there. And I called him. I say, hey, please come over and sit down, have a discussion with me. Boom. An email has been responded to. I think I actually DM'd you, and here you sit. Now, you are far above net worth and so much more than every person that I've spoken to sit there thus far. Yet it's so hard to get Mr. Malema, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, and all those people on the seat. What do you think is the problem? Do they not want to be questioned? Do they not want to have the hard questions?
They don't want to have the hard questions. They're used to standing in a stadium and screaming against whiteness. They're used to standing in a stadium and giving prepared speeches. I mean, Cyril, at best, should be a newsreader on television. At best. He's
Mr. Ramaphosa, I'm not going to do that in kind of insults.
Are we allowed to swear on this channel?
You may.
Well, I won't. He's completely and utterly useless. I wouldn't hire him in any business, in any position. Cyril is pathetic. Useless. Julius has got a brain. He's smart. And he's
I think he's brilliant. He's brilliant, but
he's a monster.
He is a monster. I think South Africa don't really trust him, but he's got a brain.
Yeah,
but the problem I've noticed about him, he keeps shifting the goalposts. Right.
He looks at the political spectrum and goes, no one's a fascist leftist. I'll be the fascist leftist.
Right.
But he's never going to get more than 7-8%. Most South Africans actually get on with each other. There isn't as much racism in this country as you think. It's been spurred up by the ANC.
I love the sound of that because I'm of agreement.
For 30 years, the ANC's run this country. Effectively, the black South Africans have run this country for 30 years.
Yep.
And only now is the racism issue being wound up. It's entirely political.
Oh, absolutely. So I did say to somebody that they disagreed with me. Again, let me just give a background. I've never lived in a township a day in my life.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Not one night.
So except I'm not a billionaire, you are, but I've been privileged quite equally to a billionaire because, I lived in a similar suburb, right? And they say, you've never gone through the pain and the atrocities of white people, so you won't understand. I'm like, I don't need to understand if there's racism or not. I've been around the world. I've been around different types of white people. And the thing is, a racist person is not shy to be racist. If a 40-year-old man sit next to a billionaire who's 60-year-old, he'd be disgusted by me. That's racism.
Correct.
He would not sit here.
The Chinese are more racist than any white guy I've ever met in my life.
I married a Chinese woman once upon a time. I have a half Chinese baby.
Okay, well,
I know all about that.
You've covered all bases. So you're in good shape.
I understand how that works.
Chinese are racist.
As hell, right? China, don't be mad at me. I still want to come into the country. It's just, this is how I feel about my experiences with you. Now, you are privileged because you're white. You're racist because you're white. Well, I'm just using you as, the backboard here. So you're getting the smoke for everybody else, air quotes. You're privileged because you're white. Apartheid made you benefit.
Who came up with this nonsense? This is the leftist narrative.
There is empirical evidence about it, though.
There's none. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. There I swore. This is leftist narrative. It's critical race theory invented by one person and pushed by the leftists because they want identity
Marxist,
politics. Right? Exactly. It's cultural Marxism. And it's absolute nonsense. And we need to stand up against it and swat it back to where it belongs. Do not believe in DEI, CRT, BLM. All of these three-letter acronyms are cultural Marxism. And they're rubbish. If you look at South Africans are way more cohesive, way more conservative, Judeo-Christian, 85%, and we work together. We've interbred, we work together. Other than the 40-something years of apartheid and the 30 years of the ANC, South Africans actually got on and worked together pretty much.
I think they even started working together, back in apartheid time, because I want to ask you about LPSA, PFP, FFF, and all these political parties. You were alive back then.
Who's LPSA?
Liberal Party, South Africa. They were there in the 50s, so you weren't.
A little bit young there.
You weren't there.
A little bit young.
But what about PFP? You were there.
Progressive Federal Party.
Yeah, Progressive Federal Party. Tell me about them. You were probably in your teens, 20s. You were probably in the military at that time, if I'm just checking the dates. What was it like?
So a large number of white people, but still a minority, would have voted against apartheid. Okay?
Did they not already?
They did. Helen Suzman in Parliament, is one of the great, the Oppenheimers stood up publicly anti-apartheid. A lot of
Oppenheimers are hated because they're billionaires too. But please,
who they hated by?
Well, anybody remember white supremacy is, the whole CRT thing, right? So I want you...
Such rubbish.
Because you lived in that time. So if anybody can tell us about more of an experience that they actually experienced, is you.
So there's a macro environment and a micro environment. Micro in South Africa, macro international.
Right.
Okay? Let's quickly talk about the international environment. We had communism spreading across the world and the West fighting against it. Africa was divided. Okay? There was also colonialism being removed. So from the 60s onwards, 1975, a key year, Kenya and Ghana went, became independent. Zambia, Northern Rhodesia, independent. Rhodesia had UDI. Then, Angola and Mozambique, 1975, the Portuguese pulled out. And slowly, the fear of communism coming south. And there was a lot of military psychology going on in South Africa. You've got to be ready to fight against the communists on the border. Okay? Internally, there was a huge number of people fighting against apartheid. A lot of white people, a lot of Jewish people, by the way, anti-apartheid.
How were they fighting?
Politically, on the street, When I was at UCT, there were strikes by students, including myself, anti-apartheid strikes, blocking roads, the police coming at us. Huge amount of anti-apartheid activism. But there was always the fear, because the government played propaganda games like the ANC does, if swart gevaar, the fear of the black taking over, the fear of communism.
Sorry to interrupt you. So when you were doing all these strikes, with black people standing right next to you in the process, or they were like, hey, you still black, stay
us.
there, we just don't like apartheid?
No, with us, we were all together at UCT. There were a lot of black and colored kids at UCT with me, and we were all striking against apartheid.
Okay.
I got a friend of mine, Lawrence Rose, and I got chased up the Jan Smuts statue by 2 dogs, police dogs, and he had his pants torn. I remember that clearly. Every time I drive past the statue, I say to my wife, that was the statue we got chased up by police dogs. So there was a lot of intermingling, a lot of cohesion between black and white students. Not at school. When I was at school, it was only white kids. It isn't anymore. But at university, there were black and white kids.
And which years was this in university?
I went 1978, 79, 80, 81, 82.
The SADOC, the South African Democratic Organization, although not well documented, were a white organization that worked with the ANC. And there were some other organizations trying to work with the ANC, and some have actually done that. Why is that not documented and known in recent history? Instead, hate is put. You're white.
Because it's
white. And the reason why I'm persisting on white, black hate white is because South Africa's thread is woven around how bad a white person is.
That's recent. That's recent propaganda by the ANC, EFF, and MK. It doesn't exist in reality. In reality,
but what about 1976? What about certain years in 1980 when there was just mayhem on the streets and black people were killed because of apartheid?
And white people did not ever hate each other. They did not hate each other. But then there was the war to get rid of apartheid. Okay? So there was externally MK, which were of no impact whatsoever. Okay? You think Umkhonto we Sizwe were a threat to the apartheid military. They were not in the slightest. South Africa could have gone on a hell of a lot longer than 1994. But in the end, international sanctions made the difference. And in 1985, and I want to come back to 1985, the Afrikaner leadership of this country got together and made a decision, a conscious decision. They had to change, and apartheid was not sustainable. It took another 9 years to get rid of it. Okay? But they made a conscious decision. And it was sanctions that made the big difference. And if people ask me, what should America do? Okay? They should sanction the leaders of EFF, the leaders of MK, and the leaders of the ANC. Sanction them individually.
Please don't sanction, because I'm feeling the gray list pain right now. Please just don't do it.
Are you on the gray list?
Not necessarily me, but there's some transactions that can be made because of that gray listing. So it's a painful process.
Bring the sanctions on.
Oh, no, please do not bring
the sanctions
Let's find
on,
a different
because
way.
we need what happened in 1985 to happen now, and force the ANC to stand up and say socialism and racism, and the ANC is a racist organization. They are.
But I can't be black and be racist.
Who says who?
I mean, that's the narrative. I can't be black and be
Whose
racist.
narrative?
That's the critical race theory.
Well, they're morons. Critical race theory is cultural Marxism, is moronic. These are stupid people. Don't listen to it. Are you racist?
Oh, hell no. I can't be racist.
I'm not either.
See,
so,
the tough...
say you can't. Don't say you can't because you're black. You're a human.
No.
I don't care about you.
I hear that. I can't be racist because if I actually go one extra generation back, my mother is half white. My son is half Chinese. I just don't know where to start with the racism. I have no idea where to start.
Well, it's a good answer, but it's an excuse.
Now I became the bad guy. It's an excuse. But please explain yourself. Please explain yourself.
Fundamentally, the vast majority of humans on this planet are not racist. To look at a person's skin and judge them by their skin color is a base form of stupidity. Martin Luther King said it all. He said, judge a man by his character, not by his skin.
Not by his skin.
And I believe most South Africans do that. They actually get on well with each other, can work together, And if you look at 94 to 2008, we did.
Yeah.
We had meritocracy, we had economic growth, and people were benefiting. And then that gangster Zuma and the Guptas and the spineless Cyril Ramaphosa destroyed this country over the last 10 years.
Just so you know, former President Jacob Zuma, I'd like you to be here, so I'm not going to call you a gangster. None of those names. There's some things I agree with.
I'm being polite
disagree
calling
with.
him a gangster.
No, you may do as
I'm
you
being
wish.
polite. I'd like to really tell you what I think about him.
I'm a freedom of speech kind of guy, so I
can
really
figure
want you
out
to
to
express yourself.
I do. That's why I'm here.
Let's speak about poor white people. I'm of not only the belief, but I've seen it. There's just a whole bunch of poor white people and almost everywhere in the country. Now, it is a notion by a lot of black people, if not most of them, that you are white and you're rich. The gentleman we spoke about that was sitting on that seat, he said to me, a white person would never want to be in your position. I said 99% of this country would want to be in my position, and they're white. It says, except if they say they got to be black in the process. I said, how does that make sense? Why would I want to be any other race than the race than I am? But they connect economic and race together and make it look like they're at war, and they play this technical game. White people in South Africa, how poor are they?
Do you know there's a white squatter camp outside of Pretoria called Sonskynhoekie? Okay.
Say that name again.
Sonskynhoekie. It means sunshine corner. And these are people destitute. But I'll tell you one difference here, and maybe it's cultural. There's no litter. In their impoverished, desperate situation, they pick up the litter. So here's the difference. Race should never be an issue. The color of your skin is irrelevant. The color of your eyes, the color of your hair is irrelevant. But some cultures are better than other cultures. Some political systems are better than other political systems. And some economic systems are better than the other economic systems. And it's the cultural issue where people get sensitive and go, well, you can't talk about that. Let me take it.
Let's talk about it as a matter of fact. Right. So
take Indian culture. I think it's disgusting to let cows walk down the street and defecate on the road and you can't touch them because they're a sacred animal. I think that's stupid.
I think that's just trash.
I think tribal cultures are also 200 years behind the scene. The whole concept of having a strong man make the decisions for you is stupid. I believe in the sovereign individual. Every individual in their family is the most important decision makers. And it goes from there
to
patriarchy.
The and I'd like to cover patriarchy a little bit later.
Family isn't patriarchy.
I think patriarchy has been redefined in our system a little differently. I'm a patriarch and I'm a proud patriarch. I don't care what any feminist says. The thing is, patriarchy is not there to the demise of women. It's not there to the demise of anybody else. As a matter of fact, I'm of the belief it's there to, uphold everybody that is a part of your community or family. It's just that word because even critical race theory and feminism have redefined what it means. It just means leader of a household or a tribe.
But a woman could be the leader of a household. It doesn't have to be a man. Patriotic means male.
Correct.
And my wife and I are equal partners in our marriage. We specialize in certain things.
But patriarchy does not mean the other person is not equal to the other.
Okay. That's how you describe it.
But the topic is not patriarchy at this time.
Look,
I
think if you believe in any leftist, if you believe in CRT, net zero, DEI, any of those leftist constructs, that you have a mental health disorder.
Let's speak about that. Because
how's about that?
Yeah. I don't like the left.
Leftists have mental health disorders. I mean, how can you have more than two genders? I'm sorry, you got to be.
At least in South Africa, we still have two genders.
Stupid or mentally ill to believe that.
You live in Cape Town. I once lived in Cape Town. I think they're starting to have a couple more genders.
No.
Just a little bit.
No. How does that happen?
Well, I think it's more the younger generations. But fortunately, in general, we still have two genders. But I wanted to talk about, poor white people and then move on to black people. Now, one culture can be better than the other. The insinuation here, and I'm sampling it from, there's no litter in these white squatter camps. And then it is fact that the black area is a filth, right? So I'm sampling from that to say that the white culture right? I'm not sure if it's Afrikaans
It's not
culture.
white and it's not black.
Okay.
It's,
So
I'll tell
what
you what
culture
it
is it?
It's Judeo-Christian.
But the squatter camp you just spoke about is
Yeah,
not
it's Judeo-Christian.
really. Tell me more.
All the white people in this country are Christian or Jewish. Okay. The majority of the black people in this country are Christian. Okay. Anyone who believes that the Judeo-Christian culture isn't the dominant and best culture in the world is missing a point. And it's as simple as the fact, when people leave and escape their country for whatever reason, where do they want to go? They want to go to Europe, Britain, America. Okay? They don't want to go to Russia, China, and Iran. No one in their right mind wants to go to Iran.
But it seems like a lot, well, definitely not Iran, but a lot of people are going to China. I mean, it happens that if a girl is depressed and she's got some education, she's going to be a teacher in China.
No one's going to. A teacher in China. It's a temporary job. They're not going to China. There's not a mass inflow of immigrants from...
Fair enough.
From where do Africans want to go when they leave Africa? They want to go to Europe. Okay? Because it's the Judeo-Christian culture. It's freedom, democracy, and capitalism. Those are the dominant cultural manifestations.
And how's that better than the black culture here in South Africa?
So I believe, talking black and white, most of the whites came to this country from Europe, okay? Whether it was Germany, France, Britain, or all the sort of Huguenots escaping their religious persecution. The black tribes came from East Africa 1,500 years ago, okay? We all met. Supposedly, the story goes, the whites and blacks met at the Fish River, just 800 kilometers up from Cape Town, okay? So there's no such thing as, any of us being the original South African. And I think that concept's ridiculous anyway. Give our land back. I'm sorry, whose land? The fact is the government controls most of the land in this country.
I always try to avoid having that discussion because it's such a slippery slope. Because
it's fact-based, and the ANC government lie. They lie. I think what has held back a lot of people in this country, majority black people, has been tribalism, because that's cultural. It's not racial. Okay, I think tribalism has its benefits and has its disadvantages. And the disadvantages are you are reliant entirely upon your tribal leaders making the decisions. And how can that be good for you in a modern, interconnected world? With people migrating and moving around and looking for opportunities. Why should you always defer to a tribal leader for the decision? I think that has actually been holding South Africa back.
If we look at 1994 until probably 2008 or so, 10.
Let's pick that date.
Let's pick that date because you used it. Until 2008, I actually didn't see so much racism, but I did see a lot of tribalism in the ANCs and all the other parties. Whereas it's like there's a ex-Xhosa president. Ooh, we can't have a Zulu president. We just cannot have one, right? And then we had one. It's like, oof, we don't know if we need to have another tribe. But then what happened is, I see the tide turn. It's like it's not even so much the tribal anymore. It went to race. I don't know if anybody actually picked up that evolution that happened.
It's entirely propaganda. It's political power games. Yeah.
Let's talk black versus white again.
Do we have to?
Yes, we do. So I told you.
It's such a non-issue. I mean, the color of your skin. Why is this so important?
It's not important to me. However, viewers need to see perspective.
They need to grow up.
They need
to get beyond it. Let's talk about capitalism and socialism.
Now, as I mentioned, there's some politicians that live in our area. I'm pretty sure you know of some politicians.
And Julius has lost a bit of weight.
Too much stress. He lives up the road. He recently moved up there. And I don't know how much I should expose before I get into trouble with him and say, privacy. But the man has
got
become
kicked out of the
exceptionally...
Club, I know that. For not paying his bills.
I'm going to leave that one alone because I don't know. I don't know much about it. So he lives in a very beautiful house, right? The man continues to become very wealthy amongst a lot of other people, right? And the reason why I'm using him is because he's a neighbor. And he's continued to become wealthy. He uses socialism to say, look, state own everything. Yet it seems as if he continues using that system, he's going to be far more richer than he is currently. That opportunism communism versus capitalism. Do you think they want to be communists, a
It's
communist
not-
country, so that
it's
they
nothing
can
to
become
do
rich?
with ideology. It's to do with central control. Take Aaron moron Mozzoledi, useless moron Mozzoledi, who was head of health, then he was head of home affairs,
Right.
now he's back to head of health. The only reason they're pushing NHI forward is because they're incapable of fixing what we already have. None of them have been in business, but they haven't a clue how to run a piss up in a brewery. These are stupid people. You have Aaron Mozzoledi, back to head of health, pushing NHI. NHI is unaffordable or will bankrupt the country. But we have a health system. Why can't we just fix what we have? You know why? Because NHI is central control. It's a massive budget up here, and they know they can steal. If there's a functioning democracy, a functioning economy, and a functioning country, it's hard to steal. But if things are broken down, these guys can steal. And if you bring everything up to central control, state-owned enterprises, it's the easiest way to steal. And that's all the ANC want to do. They've got this cadre network they've got to feed with money, and they have to keep stealing. But they've run out of money, and they're going to run out of friends very soon. Because Russia and China will not be interested in supporting the ANC, and Iran is going to get smacked very soon.
Why wouldn't they be interested in supporting the ANC?
Why
'Cause
bother?
now
They've got America to deal with. Right now, Steve Witkoff is in Putin's office saying to Putin, "You, pal, are America's bitch. We are bigger, stronger, and meaner than you. We're going to slap Zelensky around publicly. We're going to slap Europe around publicly. But in private, we're going to slap you around, pal. In public, you're not going to lose your face, but you're going to pull out of Ukraine. You're going to pull out of Iran. You're going to kick the North Koreans out. And you are our bitch."
reason why
And
you
that's
want to
what's
keep
happening
bringing
to
it back
Putin right
here.
now. And he
Why
is
is South
not
Africa
going to back the ANC. The last thing he cares about is supporting MK and the ANC with head-to-head with America. And China's going to face the same thing. Once
Then
America's
what is
solved
the obsession with BRICS? South Africa's obsession with BRICS.
BRICS, South Africa's like the tail end Charlie, is the least relevant. Nobody respects.
Now I want to know
Nobody respects
what
South
is
Africa
the-
in BRICS.
Sure, but what is South Africa's obsession? Because the push on BRICS, the marketing on BRICS from the South African standpoint is
'Cause-
heavy.
Because they have been funded by Russia in the past. They have been helped by China, and they have been bribed by Iran, without a doubt. So that's where they've been getting their money from. The ANC was bankrupt a year ago, and all of a sudden they had money. Because Naledi Pandor, anti-Semite, went to Iran, brought the money back. Parla. Where do you think that money's from? It's from Iran. Cyril is complicit in this whole thing. And the Americans know it. Why are the Americans treating him with such disdain? Not attending the G20 meetings, kicking Ebrahim Rasool out. They're treating South Africa, the ANC, as the ANC should be treated. And China and Russia are not going to ride to the rescue because they're going to be facing head on with America.
But why does the president have, I almost said the balls?
He has
Actually,
no
let me
balls.
just
He has
say
no
that.
balls or spine.
Let me actually say the sentence. He had the balls to say what Robert Mugabe once said. We'll keep our South Africa, you keep your America. Do you think that's playing a very dangerous game?
Yeah. The ANC, when they hit rock bottom, they keep digging. They are the best football team at scoring own goals on the planet. These are
Not like
morons.
that, yeah.
These are morons.
Yeah.
They're stupid as hell.
Yeah. South Africa is going bankrupt.
Yes.
How far are we from bankruptcy? How far are we until a regular person can't afford the price of bread?
We
How
are
far are
inches
we
from that. We have passed the IMF debt ceiling limit,
Right.
which I think 60%, we're at 70. Okay? But if South Africa goes to the IMF for a loan, the IMF rides in here and says, you're going to be a free market country or else.
You know,
So the ANC are
Mr.
trying not to
Hersov,
do that because they
you're-
can't
you-
steal under that
you're a
environment.
billionaire, right? You're a billionaire. And the thing is not how much is in your pocket you're a billionaire that I'm talking about. It's how well you can think, right? How high your level of thinking is. And what I try to do in that is always try to bring you down to a place where we could speak to regular people, right?
Okay, so
There is my photographer sitting there. He needs to be able to afford bread, rent, electricity, and all the basic stuff. South Africa has gone bankrupt. Now, as if you're speaking to him while facing me, how do you explain to him this is what South Africa is going to look like in 2026 because of what's happening right now? Break that down for me.
The ANC has followed a strategy that is socialist, that believes in central control, where all decisions are made by the Muppets of the ANC, who are proven to be completely incompetent. And as a result, we have run out of money. This country is on the edge of bankruptcy. There's nowhere to go. The only way out of it is economic growth. It's that simple. And you will never get economic growth from people who don't know how to make it happen and have this ridiculous ideology that is socialist, central control, and now racist. They will never make it happen. The only way to make it happen is to go to free market and capitalism, which will drive rapid economic growth, bring people out of poverty.
That's what they must do, but what must he do?
He who?
He
must vote, not vote for the ANC, MK, and EFF. He's got to snap out of this kind of the ANC or the liberation of apartheid. 30 years of incompetence. Surely he should realize now it isn't working and look for an alternative.
I'm going to say this, Mr. Hersov, and I say this with respect. I think being at that level makes it hard to relate to the regular person. Most people say that about me. I'm actually happy with it for the most part. Can't lie. I think where I am in a mental space is a beautiful place, and I try to educate as much people as possible. But there's always, I keep missing them. Right?
So let me give one clear message.
So on your end, I see the same thing. But I understand you, and I understand you very, very, very clear.
Here's my message.
Let's go for it.
Your children have no future if you keep voting ANC, MK, and EFF. They have no future, none, of ever getting a job, ever getting educated, and ever having a chance in life. You need to realize a change is necessary, and it's necessary now.
You heard? You took notes?
He's smiling.
All right. Feminism. I'm of the belief, and it's hard for me to get some empirical evidence, but I could see it, that feminism is part of the reason why we have a decline in our economy. What's your take?
So feminism in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was a good thing. We need to be treated equally. It's now gone insane. It's now about cultural Marxism again. It's the evil woke mind virus. And Musk is right. Women are being treated equally. They are earning the same amount. And let me tell you now, women and men are different. Whatever you like to hear or don't like to hear, statistics show that men are 80% more likely to pursue STEM subjects and be successful in them. 90% of surgeons in the world are men. 90% of speech therapists in the world are women. We are different. Men and women are different. Agreed. Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't be treated equally. We should be treated equally. But we are different animals. Men are bigger, stronger, and faster. No matter what way you look at it, these are the facts.
But
the problem with leftists is they go with feelings, not facts. If we stick to facts in every subject, whether it's about racialism, economy, democracy, Judeo-Christian values, if you stick to facts, everything I'm saying is correct, and everything the leftists say is wrong. So why is feminism even being discussed today? It's gone far beyond what it was correctly 20, 30 years ago. It's now a mental health disorder, anyone who's pushing.
So I might need to agree with you there. But now the thing is, I'm going to frame this whole thing as a technical misogyny from the end. It's like, okay, so men go to the STEM fields. Why can't women be there? We got to put women there. We got to empower them. Let's put them there.
Why? Why force something that isn't natural?
We want equality. We want equality.
But do we? You want to give equal access, not equal result. This is where you're wrong. And a good example is the Springbok rugby team. Look at its every single shape and size, and every single, as you love to harp on about, racial, except the Indians. They hadn't made it into the Springbok rugby team.
They're not very athletic in that.
Well, they're better at
category.
cricket.
Yeah,
they're very good at
cricket.
cricket.
So that's the thing.
No, they're
Yeah.
athletic, but they prefer cricket.
Right.
And look at the Springbok rugby team. Because the huge efforts been made to get people into the system, give them equal access, the result is the result. In 10, 15 years' time, the Springbok rugby team may be 100% black. Actually, the colours are producing some very good wingers. So you could have some wingers. And you may not have a white person in the starting team of the Springbok rugby team in 15 years. So what? If we're still world champions, I salute that. So you do want equal access, but equal result is idiotic. You shouldn't have to have a team that is, 12% white and 20%. That makes no sense.
Two women? How about two women in the team?
No, women don't play men's sports. Men don't play women's sports.
That's misogynistic.
No, it's not. It's not. So you believe that men who identify as women, mental health disorder, should be allowed to compete against women in women's sports.
I don't, but I'm asking you the question.
Of course not. It's idiotic. Women are more empathetic. Women can deliver children, men can't. I mean, we are different, okay? You and I are both men, but we are very different to women, okay? Very. If you look at the IQ curve, no one likes to hear this, okay? You ready?
I'm ready.
If you look at the IQ curve, men are the top 2%. All the Nobel Prize winners, the greatest geniuses on this planet are men. And the bottom 2% are all men. The psychopath, killers, most evil monsters are men. Women are solidly in the middle.
Right.
What does that say? We're the outliers.
Right.
Okay? We have more computational power than women. Now, people are going to freak out about this, but I said it here first. Chess. The most equal game on planet is chess. The only difference when we're playing chess is the person with the white pieces moves first. That's it.
Racist.
Otherwise, I knew so. Stop it.
That's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's a game.
Yeah.
Okay. It's all about computational power. The top 100 grandmasters in the world, 99 are men, 1 woman. Why? Because men have greater computational brain power than women. And everyone's going to say, I'm a whatever they want to say. Look at the facts. But women have skills we will never have, abilities we will never have, empathy we will never have.
Right.
But we are different. So why try and force 50% of STEM graduates to be women if they are not inclined to do that? Or force 50% of the speech therapists to be men if they're not inclined to do that? It doesn't make sense. Equal access, not equal result. Bang. My wife said to me, it's limited upside and unlimited downside talking about the difference between men and women. On your show, you've heard it first.
I do feel like feminism versus whatever non-feminism is a race to the bottom. Everybody is trying to see how low can we go, right? And the first one to get to the bottom wins, except it's an abyss. Nobody actually quite gets there.
You know Sizwe Mpofu Walsh?
I do.
So I was on his show. And there were a few negatives when somebody said, why don't you meet Sizwe? I thought his father's Dali Mpofu, monster. He created the Rhodes Must Fall thing, terrible. He accused St. John's of being racist, having left the school. And he's done things that you would think, this guy's terrible.
Right.
But every time I listened to one of his shows, one of those things would be knocked down. He even said, and this is what impressed me the most, he felt guilty about the Rhodes Must Fall momentum, the narrative, because he began it, and he said it was then a race to the bottom. And leftism is a race to the bottom.
Absolutely.
The author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, was a lefty. And then she said, but there are only 2 genders. And the left attacked her and attacked her and attacked her. Russell Brand was a lefty. He's now gone the other way. Anyone with a brain...
Galveston was a left once upon a time.
So
then I woke up.
You know the story. If you're 21 years old and you haven't been a lefty, you have no heart. If you're older than 21 and are still a lefty, you have no brain. So it says it all.
I like that. I mean, just off camera, when the cameras stopped, we were speaking about common ground. So this whole time, I was jumping through topics and changing faces while talking to you, because the idea was trying to see where I can poke holes. Let's get to common ground.
You did it well.
Thank you.
You got me riled up on some things.
I
But
noticed.
knew you
I
were
noticed.
just saying it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm definitely liberal. I do have a lot of conservative factors about me, and it seems that you are very much the same. So, what is the difference between being a liberal and being left, and being conservative and being right?
Common sense. The liberal and conservative meet in the middle on common sense. They disagree on the margin. There's woke left and woke right. And they've both lost the plot. In the middle is where we can talk, agree to disagree, but at least find a common thread that takes us all forward. And so we're in the right area. The hardcore lefties are mental health disorder, and the hardcore righties, and I think there are a lot less of them than the hardcore lefties.
I don't know if YouTube will actually cut this out because they don't like this word. There's a saying that says retards don't know that they're retarded. Do you think people that have mental health issues, as we're describing it, because we do agree on that, actually know that that's a mental health problem?
No.
So what do we do?
We have to ignore them, we have to push back at them, and we have to keep reminding ourselves we're right and being proud about what our cultures, our civilizations have created. Because what we've done has been the best the world has ever had. The Western Judeo-Christian culture is the best culture the world has ever created. And where democracy and capitalism came from was Britain with the Magna Carta, and then amplified by the American Constitution. If the French and Spanish had ruled the world, we would be run by elites and the Catholic Church.
I wanted to close this off by going to depth about South Africa. It's always green on the other side for everybody. Reasons why I can't leave South Africa in this mess that it is. It's still a great country, and even though things are falling apart, there are some opportunities that in almost every African country I would not get. I've lived in Europe for a couple months at a time. There was a time I used to go every other 6 months in the wintertime. And I realized, although there's a lot of competence, that place is falling, and socialism is also taking over that place. I do not like the thread of that.
I agree.
America is still probably one of the best places to live, but
Without a doubt.
I still think I'm attached to South Africa.
Same with me.
Please explain to people, as somebody who has done 6 decades and seen 6, 7, 8 different South Africas in the time, how this place is still paradise, although it's burning.
So I lived for 31 years overseas. So half my life I've been in America, Europe, and the UK. And I came back in 2016. My wife's a New Zealander, safest country in the world. They have no neighbors, no
snakes.
nothing that bites you and kills you. And she loves it here. She says this is the most vibrant, exciting, wonderful country. But here's why I really believe in South Africa. There is no one more capitalist than a spaza shop owner and a taxi driver, because they are the capitalists of capitalists. This country is 85% Judeo-Christian, but it's 99% capitalist. The average South African, black, white, whatever, is naturally a capitalist. And what the ANC, MK, and EFF are doing is political. They're trying to impose on us something that isn't in our hearts and in our souls. And if I go to meetings, whatever the color, the race, the shapes and sizes of the people around it, particularly in Joburg, where you get much more of a mix, I get so excited. I think this country's got a chance. These are extraordinary people, and I get excited. I meet you, and I hear where you're coming from, and I know this country has a real chance, and I want to be part of it.
Right.
I don't need to be here. I don't need to take the nonsense I take. I don't need to get the death threats be accused of treason, be screamed at and hated by MK, EFF, and the ANC. I don't need to do it. I could live in a bubble in Cape Town. I can go live anywhere else in the world. I can be the last chopper out of Saigon, but I stay here because of people like you, and you, who are going to make this country great. And we can. I think we can.
Let's say I take that position and say, I want to run for president, and God knows I don't. And I want to be in charge of something. Would you be that person to advise this young man or any young man in my position to run the country or town or city? Would you be that person? Would you be a call away?
Yes. And by the
There
way,
you have it.
you're looking very presidential right now.
So gone with the whole wokeism questions and now back to the real version of me.
So Gayton McKenzie, who I admire, and you must get on your show. I'll get him on
Could you
your show.
please give him a call and say, please come, because I've been trying to get hold of him.
I got him on Caesar's show.
Really?
And he outdid me. He's got 30,000 more views than me, which is
30,000 more.
But I'll
Please,
get him on
I'd
the
like
show.
you to be on my show.
But I said to Gayton, Gayton, I'm never going to be in politics. I haven't got the character to do that. And I'm not interested. I prefer what I'm doing. If you are ever president, what role would you want for me? Do you know what he said? He said, I want you to be the guy that calls me and says, keep your feet on the ground. I want you to be the guy, Rob, that keeps me grounded so I don't get ahead of myself in the position and keep doing the right job for South Africa. And I said, that's the job I want.
I don't know you, Will. I've known you for the past 2 hours. And I'm going to judge from what I see. This billionaire is a word that I've used quite a lot of times on this, in round. That be it, billion and rand is still a lot of money. You're still richer than 99% of the Americans or 99% of the world, 99.9. You are a very, 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 very wealthy man. And you were an email away. And I asked you to sit here and you did. And you still try to have these hard conversations. You could be like, look, I don't have time for your puny ass to talk to you. Who the hell do you think I am? Do you know how many billions I have in my pocket? Do you know with a snap of a finger, I could change my world and the world around me? Yet, you sitting with me and a lot of other people, and you saying, I want my voice to be heard. Because through my voice, you are being empowered. This is empowering. Man, I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks knowing that you were coming. This is empowering to have this. Now, I can imagine a lot of other people are having this. Please continue and empower people the way you have. People see the wealth and say, maybe he's getting something out of Rob. Or they see that they have a reason to see you as a bad person because of that status. I've seen nothing. It's 2 hours. I've seen nothing but good in this. And please keep it up.
Thank you.
Keep it up. Keep challenging.
Thank you,
everybody.
Mr. President.
I'm not going to be president. I'm not going to be president. And thank you so much. And hopefully I can speak to you in a couple of months. Maybe we can have discussions in between and have a different perspective and see where the country will be, hopefully later this year.
Love what you do.
Thank you so much.